we know that side of him, but Benjamin's been he's traveled across the globe more than most ever have the opportunity to, and worked at a level that is incredibly high at different age groups and across the board. So we asked him to come in and talk to us and just share some of his thoughts and kind of go off on it. And some of my best conversations with Benjamin over the 20 plus years that I've known him have just been on a whim. So we'll see where it goes. But I know he has a plan because we talked about it earlier. So Benji, take it over. You should be able to share your screen if you want to, or anything you got.
Okay, I will. First, last night I was watching Ken Burns, the documentary on jazz, and he talked about jazz is different every night. So because they're all riffing, and it occurred to me, so you might have an idea as a coach of what you're going to do when you show up, but everything changes because you don't know if the breeze comes in or not, if the Delta breeze, if you might have 5 kids that are all of a sudden caught in an accident, so they can't make it to training. So instead of 17, you have 12, and you have an idea of where you're going to head. But I think the top coaches, and this is at every level except for, I mean, even at my highest level, I think that I've coached is Sac Republic. And the youth national teams, you could say you could plan a great deal with those levels, but even there, a player could get injured in a warm-up. They could do their first part of their training and come in and see the trainer in the morning. We've already planned a session, but all of a sudden they come in and say, whoever's out. So you have to plan at the moment. The other thing is you might be caught in a downpour. You might be, I mean, who knows? But that's, as you become more and more experienced, that I think that struck me last night watching Thing on Jazz. I looked at your guys' website prior to this, and I saw the power staff. So I in no way am coming and telling you this is the way, this is the way to do it, or far be it from me to tell you guys with all your experience of what to do. I just want to share with you. I decided to do it where I'll share with you what I've done. And I put in there, it's my philosophy or my intentionally, so that it's not me going around spouting, this is the way it's done here, there, anywhere. Having said that, this has, my vision has developed probably from you have influenced it. I particularly remember coaching against Ruben Mora, and I think in the old River City tournament, his team, I had a poor Roanoke Park Express team, and we gradually clawed our way up to respectability and played against him. And it always struck me, his demeanor on the sideline in that game, the way his team played in that game struck me, and it, in a way, I think influenced, and it goes with all of you. All right, so here's my spiel. So I just figured go through. I found this reading the Johan Cruyff book, so I'll let you read it briefly, and I've highlighted parts. But for me, my philosophy is football is really simple, and training is really simple.
Share your screen because I don't think anybody else can see it.
No?
No. Anybody else? I don't see it. Okay.
Go down here. Sorry, everyone. I've had it in the background the whole time.
Hey, and so your internet is a little bit choppy, so the audio at times is cutting in and out. So just FYI. I don't know how you change that. Probably not.
Maybe I'll go back to my place for the. Damn it! I'm on our office Wi-Fi. Yeah, it just said okay. All right. So can you see my screen? Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good. Let's go.
Okay, so this is from Cruyff, talking about a top coach in Ajax. 5 fundamentals, playing games always. And that's one of the things you look at a lot of the, how much playing football is a part of the development, but he talks about the basic fundamentals of shooting, heading, dribbling, passing, controlling the ball. From my experiences, most of the time, passing and receiving are covered in almost every training. Shooting is not enough. So I've tried to do as much as possible to finish on goal, or to have goals involved in training, which then lead to more goals in games and more goals in a kid's life, because they're finishing as much as possible on goal. Busy ball, he puts, and then the easiest way, let me get this pointer. There you go. Easiest way is often the hardest. I worked for Ajax Orlando. The club had the partnership with Ajax Amsterdam. And I never forget, a top trainer on the West Coast, top coach, top director, came to a session that Barry Holshoff, who won 3 European leagues or UEFA Cups with Cruyff, who coached at a good level. And he ran simple but really complicated drills. And this guy came up to me afterwards and said, that was nothing. That was simple. And I want to say, exactly, that's the point. It doesn't need to be too complicated. Cruyff, I mean, you just look at this, and I know right now there's a big argument. I watch most football, and I see a lack of high-level technique. And this was his point, which I agree with. This is the next one. So I leave a training with sweaty. So, and I know many of you do as well, but the sessions demand the highest level concentration, and the sessions, your trainings must be incredibly intense. And so for me, it requires a incredible amount of attention and intention and energy from the coach. So this is whatever. So I'm just going through some practical things. Tonight, biggest thing is training, and I think leadership. So this is my philosophy, and it's not just mine, but this is something we took to in La Liga, Zeka and I, and many clubs say the player's the project. And so the irony or the challenge for us is to have players who don't care to be the project, but those that do, how do you make them the project? It's different when you're in a club like a professional club, then you can require this mentality more. But even within Republic Youth Academy, we had kids that just wanted to go to college. And so then you have to say, okay, what is their project and how do you make it? But you also have, in our environment, we also have the reality of the team. And we have players that just want to play football for enjoyment. So why play football? I'll skip that. Okay, why do players train? So why do they play? Actually, it's here. I mean, it's a little bit too much, I think, for sort of competitive club soccer. But I know I still am fascinated with playing football. I love it. We actually talked today about how little football we see. We see a lot of kids training right now, and obviously there's a challenge to playing at home. But I think with NorCal Premier, we might start something where I play against my son in the street, 1v1, and get Matt playing against his daughter, and any of you playing against whoever you can play with in your living room, if it's mother, father versus 2 children, but playing football. So why do players play, or why do they train? They train, one, to play football. So if you have to put football within your training. And Barcelona, they dictate that at least 30% of the training, or a third of the training, must be a game. And I fully believe that unless you're recovering and you can't play, or there's a reason that you cannot play in training. They go to training for enjoyment, to improve themselves, reach their goals, to improve with the team, prepare for an event, and to be around teammates and coaches. So if I were running a club, this would be my philosophy. This is the last club that I ran, where I was responsible for an area. Basically, I said, hey, if a kid shows up and gives their all, and attends at least this percent, then they deserve to play. So under 9s through under 14s should play in multiple lines. So if a kid comes as a 9 and you know they're a wide player, they don't have the ability to play in the middle, or they're good as a wide player, make sure you play them in all 2 or 3 lines if you can. Develop them as a right back, and even if it's not within their personal quality, play them as a right wing at the same time. If don't play them only as a center back, their own take in all 3 lines early on. And then later on, start to specialize. And you'll find there'll be stronger players later on. If they played in multiple lines, eventually when they have to play in one line, they'll be better players. And then the needs of individual player must always be primary concern. I mean, that's depending on your club. Training is the foundation of success. And this is just my personal musings. Trainings builds habits. So make sure they're good habits. Training repetition. Absolute challenge for our environment. You might not have enough space. You might have too many players. But by breaking down drills, if you're going to do 2 Ajax triangle passing drills, look and see if you can do 3. But how can you get the repetition at the highest level? And then the training requires 100% effort. And anyone that's seen me run a training, I'm also stepping out of it, but open and closed trainings. So what I mean by this is from the professor at Fiorentina, but it's something that I believe in. Right now, if you came back to training and are the first game, no, that's not a good example. An open training is one where you let them have creativity, lots of choices, and you're stimulating a different side of them. A closed training might be a training that is tactically really tight. You're making decisions. You're showing certain patterns that you think will help you on the weekend be more successful. And so I don't always find the right combination. My second year at Sac Republic with the 19s, I was way too, in hindsight, too open. So we only a few times reached our peak as a team because I was trying to reach street and structure, and it's a razor's edge. So, but you have to have times where it's no, this is the way it is, and the coach centric, and you're driving it. And there are times where it's a little bit more open. And then players should enjoy your trainings. I had a coach at under 12, an Italian guy, that at trainings I remember being miserable. And so a key element for me, I want kids to want to come to training. And so I always try and make them. So again, practice makes permanent, short, sharp, with game-like intensity, repetition, repetition, repetition. Few pauses, small lines, high energy, avoid talking too much. And if at any point, ask a question. Intensive most of the time. The intensity is something that we see again and again. So here's, I think, what a training needs. Motivated players, absolutely. And I recently spoke to somebody who talked about, yeah, but at Republic you had more motivated players. I've never not had motivated players. Literally, Roner Park Express, which was a Class 3 club at the time, that was the bottom of the District 5 at the time. And I just don't accept that you can't motivate a player and get them to training, create an environment that gets them to strive. And that's the trick of coaching. Okay, culture, you have to have a culture of kids wanting to come to training, celebrating soccer, what have you. I'll go a little more into all these. Planning, environment, intensity. So developing a love for a game, creating the culture. Ideally, it's a club culture. You guys have a certain culture. I celebrate football, and everyone that's around, we celebrate football. The greatest thing that you can be doing on that day, I tell kids, you're so lucky. You basically have to study, play soccer, go to school, do your homework, play soccer, be a good person, and until you have to get a job, you get a football. And so I think by creating that environment, you get players to especially at a young age, to become young footballers. Celebrate the joy of training. People talk, oh, kids, and they don't like to work hard, or this generation, or what have you. Poppycock. If you celebrate the joy of training, I know many of you that are professionals that played at a higher level than me, and we loved as players to grind. There's nothing like sweating, working hard, improving, and getting through a training, knowing that you're going to improve your crossing and finishing, your driven ball. It just has to be celebrated, and they have to learn that it's something that should be enjoyed. Okay, and then create the culture. And I love the quote of the 100 years ago, and now it's long. But 100 years ago, 120 years ago, Brazilians didn't even know about football. And now if you think about them, you think football first, beautiful women, beaches, steak, meat, creating a culture, embrace it, I don't know, year round. And I think if the whole culture brims with football, then you got it. Environment. The environment around top clubs brims with professionalism. It's amazing the attention to detail that they spend to create the environment around a club. Kids don't walk. No, I shouldn't say that. There are plenty of times where we see kids go out into a training onto the field, and they might mess around a little bit before the coaches arrive. And I think we have video of Fiorentina, like their U16s, messing around a bit, but it was still, there's a line of, they're not giggling, falling around, wrestling. They're more messing around with trying to knock the ball off a crossbar or something like that. But generally, they understand once they're in the green that there's a certain professionalism, sharpness, organization, attention to detail, equipment, everyone wearing the proper training gear, everyone looking like a coach, and then applying the energy and the focus on the players. And I can't emphasize enough the training environment. And this is just me, what I've tried to do, and how important it is. Enjoyment, lucky to be a footballer. I've already talked to you about it. It's something that you celebrate. I mean, what better thing would you rather do than be on a soccer field? No cell phones, no coffees. I used to go around and scout for U.S. Soccer. And after, I'll share the story. Our first trip to that Andrew set up with Francois, it was 2003. It was 3 weeks. We went to 20 different clubs. We went to Ajax, and we'd been bringing the Ajax coach and staff over doing camps at the time. Andrew went down on the under-19 game. He went and hopped the bar around the field and went up in Bobby Harms Stadium, which is their third division, their stadium that they play 19s and the second team on. And he went and pounded on the side of the plastic covering the bench to say hello to Jan Olderrinkerink. And Jan Olderrinkerink afterwards ripped him and said, my friend, I'm a professional. This is my professional environment. You don't say hello to me during the game. And I think it's just that attention when the coaches it's 100%, every moment counts with them. So, and then a big thing, I think this is from Franz. He never talks in problems. He talks in challenges. Amazing when you shift your thought to process to that. It's not a problem, it's a challenge. So you don't have two goals. Okay, well then use flags on one side. It's a challenge to be overcome. No excuses, adapt to the circumstances. Proper intensity, higher intensity, lower workload at introductory phase. So as you introduce something, maybe the intensity is a little bit lower, but as you go higher and higher, then the intensity is everything. If you're training and your kids aren't pushing themselves, and there's a great Jurgen Klinsmann quote about if you're not training on your edge, and again, I'm talking kids and clubs that want to reach, with players that want to reach their highest level. But without intensity, the training time's wasted. So this is one of the first things you see. We're going to have for the PDP kids, Paulo Carboni from Santa Cruz Breakers. His son was just at Fiorentina, and he came back and he asked him, what a lot of the stuff we did is similar, but he said the intensity of the training, it's a war. And so the war is you have to declare it on your players and on the training until the level gets there. After a certain amount of work, the training intensity will be high enough that then you don't have to bring it as much because they already know that's the level. Content of the training. So if we go back to what a training needs, and this is my opinion, motivated players, culture, planning I didn't go to, environment, intensity, and then proper coaching. And that's content. And so at what age do you do what? With whom? So do you do tactical training with U9s? Probably not. You might do 1v1 and break down how to beat a 1v1. You might even do a 2v1 depending on your level. I was able to, with the highest level under 10 team I've coached at San Rose United for, I think I coached 10s 3 years in a row. Those the first team for a few years, they're under 10s. I could do 4 versus 2 to goal. And by the end of the season, I was doing 7 versus 5 or 8 versus 6 to goal, the goalkeeper and the 3-1-3. So, and they could handle it, but really simple. Tactics to under 19s. And then this is technique all the time. And I'll never forget a pretty well-known college coach argued with my brother and I that you couldn't improve technique when the players got to college. And I think that you improve technique all the time. So at Sac Republic, with the men's team, the first team, we improved technique. And I watched Barca train for five days. I watched 4 first team warm-ups. Do wine glass in their warm-up, possession in their warm-up. And I watched him do a system drill with Dembele like 3 days before he got injured for the last time. And he was out wide and they're working on his technique, on his first touch, past a dummy in a system drill. So he was switching right and left, and maybe he's just sharpening it, but content of training, planned practices with proper emphasis on fundamentals, fitness, team preparation. These are just some thoughts. Is this useful? Interesting? All right, I'll keep going. Number of hours is one of the final things. Number of trainings. You'd be amazed at what 1 day a week does for training. That's why the academy, regardless of anything that by that 4 a week, it's amazing because it's just hours. So if all of a sudden 8 hours a month extra and times 10 months, 80 extra hours, that's a hell of a lot of football. That's a hell of a lot of football. And if you're only training twice a week and you go to 3 and you just do the math, if you double your amount of training, it's amazing. And this is a big area that I think the next step is to train more, to do more extra sessions. So I look at holidays as a chance to do an extra training. Camps, I used to do the last club I worked in, it was Sonoma County Alliance. We did, I think, 2 camps a summer. San Rose United, I would do a 9-to-1 camp, 1 week a summer, in the summer. And it was amazing the steps we made in those 15 hours of extra training. So time is everything. And then playing at home, gradually with certain clubs, I would lift it to say, doing the training isn't enough. So you have 3 trainings a week with me, but you have 1 training a week at home. And so I made it mandatory. And again, at clubs that were striving and with player pools that were striving to do more. But I just said, it's a 4 days a week. I'm only going to make you come here 3. And so you just gradually make it where the playing at home is, and this is the only way we can catch people. And then proper competition. Chivas, in one of the first years of NorCal with our education, we brought a Chivas Guadalajara, Vincenzo, Chivas USA, Padova, all to Sonoma State. We did a training camp. We did coaching education first, and then we did training camps for the PDP. And this was Sebastian Leggett and Bonomo and that whole first crew that went through PDP. Chivas Guadalajara, director of coaching, told us, the coaches at that time, they wanted their players to have 60 international matches before they graduate. So they counted going to whatever the tournament in Sweden was, but going to the Ajax Futures Cup, but international matches. So this, for what it told me at the time, was wherever I am, I need to think of where are my players headed. So what do they need to have? And so we had a pretty trying to sort of change the way things were working. We said, okay, we're not going to travel as much as Santa Rosa United used to. Well, all of a sudden we realized, one, parents don't size as much. Kids love tournaments because it's a great time. They grow a lot as a team. They're together in a hotel. So we realized we erred, but we also said, we know what, we're not going up to Portland anymore. And if we only stay in the state, we don't play against the 4-4-2 counterattacking Bernie James, rough and tumble, Northwestern style of football, then our players aren't going to be used to it. And so we started to say, okay, what do our players need? And so I think this is something that you guys do, I think, well as a club. But you step into your player pool and you might choose, or you should choose your competitions based on the needs of the player pool and what they need. Yeah. So training at home, homework. So back to the number of trainings. With Sonoma County Soul, when I took over from Dave Schaefer, I went in and I said, I will only use Sonoma County players, or I'll grandfather in from the current player pool for the Soul. And half the board, luckily enough, the board believed, they said, Poppycock, how are you going to do that? And I said, I'm going to train more. Right now, we have players coming from Stanford and USF and Davis, and they're good. It's a very good team. They're going deep in the Open Cup and going into the NPSL National Championship, but no one's coming to watch them because they don't know the players. So I shifted it. The first year, I offered 4 trainings a week, and 3 players I allowed to come to 3. The rest, they had to come to 4. And it was amazing. We went to the national championship that year, and we lost. Then the next year, but we lost in the Open Cup. The next year, I kept it at 4, but I added a 5th. But the 5th was a Wednesday morning, and I just wanted to mess around with different drills, and I time. Wednesday morning, I do 10 to 12. We'd sneak onto Sonoma State, and Moby was coming over. Chris Wright was coming over. Players are coming from Sacramento to do, and I would do about 45 minutes, let them warm up on their own. I would do driven balls, only with their shoelaces on the ground, simulating shooting. And then I would do a bunch of drills to goal. I had as many goals as I wanted. And then I'd finish with small shooting games. That year, we led the country in goals scored. And we scored the final goal to win the national championship in Milwaukee or Madison. We scored a goal. A guy pulled up and hit a 30-yard with his shoelaces. And Sean Purcell later said, he never would have hit that had he not had the time to train that again and again and again. And I firmly believe that by training, we're able to actually do more. So here's, next, this is a Renus Meekles. This was on our wall for the first team and for the youth. But that's got to be the standard for players, is that the intensity and energy and focus has to be at the highest level. It's just a standard. It's a standard. I went and watched when I did the La Liga course. Afterwards, I flew to Holland. I went and met with the Dutch Federation and just had them analyze all their soccer structure. Then I went to a buddy who I stayed with. He coaches in the 7th division. And I watched their trainings. He does the 8s and under. He did circuit training with them. They're under 10s, 12s, 14s. The intensity of these trainings was, I actually videotaped it. And I need to ask him for permission to show him. Then I went to Quick Den Haag, where Andrew and Ian Mork and a bunch of guys played, and similar thing. Watch the first team in the 19s, the intensity, they're almost in fistfights. So this is my way of the way I look at a training. Pre-training, and I think the best peak pre-training I've ever seen, I don't know if he's on here, but Mickey Varelis, better known as Mikey Varis, who's at FC Dallas. The guy organized the pre-training. First of all, he's organization's one of his strong points. Whoops. I think he studied maybe even developing methodology or something in college. He's a very sharp guy. But the pre-training, he is so organized. So if you think of a kid coming, if we would say, okay, we have a two and a half training slot. So if they come early, what do? So you can have them do rondo. That for me is enough. You can have them juggle. I worked with a guy in San Jose United who came out of hockey, but he actually set up these little dribbling circuits. The players knew they had to go through these circuits. It took them about 8 minutes. They had to be rested. They do 30 seconds and then walk back, rest 30 seconds. And there were about a number of them. But his whole thing was, and I picked up from him, by the time they even got into training, they'd already touched the ball like 1,500 to 2,000 times. And so if you just add that up, and if you're aware of it as you're doing your other training, which he had to be, or I had to be, then they end up being sharp with it. So then you have your warm-up, okay, which a lot of people talk about right now. The big thing is play, practice, play, or putting in into your warm-up, you do your tech. A warm-up is for a reason. And as you get older, it becomes more important. And you can integrate the ball into it, but you can't do the technical at the highest level until they're warm. You can't demand the technical execution speed, the speed of the movements, and the speed of the actions within their drill unless they're completely warm. So while you might integrate the ball into your warm-up, I fully disagree that you don't have a warm-up period. It's also to get them ready to train. And if it's good enough for a Messi, and if it's good enough for any professional club that I go see, then it should be, I think it should be a message to all of us. It is to me, certainly. Then you have your first part, your technical. So let's say, for example, can you guys see this?
Yes.
Matteo Bernardo. Okay, so if I'm going to work on, I want to work on scoring from the width today, and I'm working with, say, I'll take under 17 boys, and this is my system of play. So here are the backs, here center backs, goalkeeper. Okay, so I want to go to goal, and I want to get repetition. So I'm going to take out this part of it. And I want to work primarily here to create chances. So I'm just take that part of the field out. And now, because I want to work on scoring, I'll move them further up the field. Here's our 2, the 3, the 6, 8, the 10, the 9, the 7, 11. So I might, in my warm-up, I'll do my warm-up. Some sort of coordination, running 2 lines, whatever. I won't get into that point. Okay, now for repetition's sake, because they're going to be shooting this way, okay, I might have them actually start here and start here with the ball and start by playing a long ball out so they do a pattern back to goal. So this is my technical: passing, receiving, a little bit of running with the ball, crossing, and finishing. So if I wanted to, I could start a little bit smaller, but I can have it where this guy plays the ball out, and then it's a pattern to goal, shoots, whoever crosses, finishes, he goes off. If I want everyone to do every position, then he goes and gets the ball, gets in line, and then they all shift. So something like that. So there's the technical focus. Okay, next. do a eraser. So now, next would be making it a positional game. So if I go here, I'll put goals. Okay, and I can put the line across here. So now I have to put it in defender. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I might say, okay, goalkeeper, 1, 2. Maybe I'll go here because we want them to have to beat someone. And I might go 1, 2 and make this a positional game. So I can say they have to keep the ball 10 passes, or they have to keep the ball. Yeah, I'll start off with 10 passes. They have to make 10 passes before they create a chance from the width. Make the chase a little bit, and I could say they get a, well, that could be it. 10 passes, and then they can create a chance to the width. So now they're keeping possession. They're having to move the ball side to side, and then gradually, that's the point. That's my positional tactical. It's a positional game, and I would get a lot of repetition by being back here with the ball. As soon as the ball goes out, boom, new ball in, but just looking to create chances by having a number overload. If it's too difficult, maybe I take out here and I just go with 1, 2, 3 players. But again, I give my attacking team more players and versus the defenders. Whoops. But find a way to create the chances. I do a lot of stuff where I divide it in columns like this. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is something Matt and I saw at Boca Juniors. We stayed a week after an ID2 trip and went for a week to Boca Juniors. I used to divide the field into 4 spaces. The guy who was director at the time, he divided it into 5 channels, right to left, and 5 channels down the middle. He left the boxes alone. So I never put channels in the box, because here it's just helter-skelter, come hell or high water, you defend or you score. But here there's a little more structure. And then the final phase, so final phase would then just be creating a game. So it could be I don't know, even numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 versus 9 to goal, for instance. But I would keep in my channels. So I might put conditions in the game where you can only score after a switch. You can only score after an overlap. You can only score off of a cross. But that would be this breakdown of a training for me. How are we doing for time? All right. I think that's it. Questions? Zeka?
Hey, Ben.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what we witnessed, obviously, when we went to, forgot the name of the club now. It wasn't Hatafe, but the kids playing outside. Because, I mean, that was something that really caught our attention, actually.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Post-training, the kids footballed for about an hour underneath the stand in a half-lit, walled-in space. At one point, I think there was a little girl on the phone. I remember we looked. There was a little kid he was the man in his own world, and then there was a rip-roaring football game going on between kids that had already trained, and they trained for hour after hour. Actually, they trained for until the parents called them, and then they ignored them. Then they called them, then they ignored them, and then finally they went and got them. So, but they talk about that they think they're losing street football, and I see street football everywhere.
Ben.
Yes.
Derek, hey, listen, I know you mentioned 4 or 5 different countries that essentially you visited. You've seen the top clubs play in those respective countries. As far as your coaching style and your methodology and so on, is it safe to say that the Dutch, because I know you mentioned Italy, you mentioned Spain, some Mexico. So is it safe to say that the Dutch, and maybe you can just kind of give me a little bit more insight on in terms of has that country influenced your style of play or your style of coaching for that matter? And essentially, for the country being that small, Holland has obviously put out some great players. And has that been specifically attributable to the way they coach their youth players?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a football country. Yeah, I mean, the Dutch have influenced me, but I had an influence, a big influence was Frans Hoek. And when he left Ajax, my first club, Roanoke Park Express, I was a director. Everyone played a 3-4-3. So if we were better than a team, we beat them back. We beat them. If we were as good as a team, we might, but it was an open game. But if we were worse than the opponent, we got our asses kicked. So then I switched to a 4-2-3-1, a 4-3-3, and I started to change. Then Hans went to Barca, and at Barcelona, the players didn't like doing the drills that they could do with the young Ajax. I mean, remember, they came up with Ajax. Louis van Gaal coached 17s, I believe 19s, 17s, 19s, and then the first team. And a little bit like Pep coached in the 19s at Barca, the second team, then the first team, and Tito coached the 17s. So when he got in and brought in all these players, Busquets and Pedro, and the same with Van Gaal, bringing in Kluivert and Reisiger and Bogarty and these players, he had already coached them. So, but when they went to Spain, they had Rivaldo and Figo, and they didn't like to do the static training as much. So he evolved as a coach, and as did Louis, and started to do more in games. And I believe the highest level coaches can do a lot within games, and you create the players enjoy it a hell of a lot more. And I believe that most of the time, the players, I believe they like to come to trainings that I run because I'm able to get into the game element pretty quickly, but I still give them so much repetition. So but then I went to Italy. Italy, they take raw material and literally they squeeze it as hard as they can and out pop these diamonds. 3 youth players a year in Italy make it from youth to Serie A. 3. That's 1 for every 100,000. In Holland, they nurture and they don't turn off because they have such a small player pool. They can't afford to lose anyone. So they have all the sports psychologists, and they're working with troubled kids, and they don't want to lose anyone. Italy almost can't be bothered. They just want to squeeze as hard as they can because they know at the end. And Simon Elliott and I talked about this a lot. He's a bit of let people reveal their character, players and youth, whereas I intervene more and try and motivate and inspire and get them to be self-motivated. So going to Argentina, Matt and I, the first youth game we went to, I was wincing from the tackles. You could hear bones cracking. They have police officers on the sideline. The football was not great. It was not. Boca Juniors, you wouldn't even, the only thing you would write about was the war they declared on each other. The technique, it's fight. The main thing is mentality and fight. Disappointing on the football side from what we saw. Boca Juniors first team, remarkable. Real Sarsfield, youth, very good. San Lorenzo, I think, Matt, I think we played them and then we stayed after and met with their coaches. So I have a lot of influences. My dream is street. I love creativity. I was a winger. I was an attacking player. But I ended up playing as a sweeper my final year of 35-year-old football, or not as a sweeper, as a center back. So I was recruited into college as a right back to Fresno State. So in Germany, I played on a 3-3-3-1. I played right or left wing. So I like free-flowing football, but I want there to be structure because I actually believe when you take away a lot of the decisions, you actually then let them be more creative because the players have a framework to work from. That's actually game model. What I'm doing for NorCal tonight is on game model. And I put in 2 models. I don't know if you can see the thing here, but I put the definition One is to plan or form after a pattern. And two, I took this, a person or thing that serves as a pattern for an artist. And so if you get one stripping down so that you could paint a nude photo, or I don't know, carve it, whatever. But I also think it struck me as the thing that serves as a pattern for an artist. If an artist has to think, I don't know, if you have to think too much about the ball, then you can't get your head up. If you have to think too much about your next decision, you know, if the ball's gone to Messi and he plays it back and you're keeping it over on one side for a bit, they know they're going to go the other direction eventually. And if they go too slowly, then it might require a different action from the 11, whoever it is. But I think by Barca and Ajax and all these clubs, they're way more programmed than people realize. And the programming is what gives them the ability to then be free, in my opinion. I don't know if that's an answer to your question.
No, it covered quite a few. Thank you.
Continents, quite a few continents it covered, which is good.
But I mean, that's the reality is I think of us. I mean, a lot of you guys that I see on the screen, we're master coaches. I mean, you learn how to lead parents, lead kids, inspire. You learn how to communicate. You out coach opponents. You take your player pool at the beginning of the year. You develop a plan to improve them. Get on the field every day and go to war on them, and grind and grind and grind. And for me, that's the secret of high-level coaching is preparation, planning, preparation, motivation, and then proper content, and then rolling up your sleeves and going to work. And that's how I've had some success is by, I think I work harder than almost anyone I know as a coach. People knew the public. For the first 3 months, I literally left sweaty the first year. On a day off, we did team building. I took them down. I walked them through Old Town, Downtown, Midtown. I told them the history. I walked them to the fort, Sutter's Fort. I told them the history, the culture of Sacramento. We held hands and did exercise, played games. I did more video. I did double. Derek, you know, we played the gold how many times? Played every adult team. I would set up 2 games on a Sunday so that everyone could get a game because I had 23 players on my roster. I could have done 1 friendly, but I would do a training in the morning. I would do a tactical session in the classroom, eat lunch, and then do a back-to-back game. And that's the Louis van Gaal. Ian Mork and myself, we were there a few years ago at Manchester United. He left at 10 p.m. Franz was taking us around. Louis left his office at 10 p.m. on a Sunday night, 10 p.m. And no one else was there. Franz was there to meet us and show us the training grounds. But that's Pep Guardiola. They have to go grab him and peel him out of the locker room or underneath the stadium. So that's, that's what I found. There's no secrets, hard work, and simple.
Thank you, Ben.
All right. I hope it was useful.
Absolutely.
I know it was a lot of talking. So,
Always.
all right.
We're going to jump on the next one now.
Okay.
With you.
All right. Adios, folks.
Benji.
Thank you
Appreciate
for letting me spend part of an evening with you.
Thank
Hey,
you.
if your internet's better at home, you should go there.
All right. Damn it.
I text Andy, so I'd get on your horse.
Okay. I'll
I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks.
Okay.
Ben. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.